So we were first introduced. I'm trying to think. So I think it was Katie Skelton who put me in touch with you, because I was going through that point of trying to grow a business, looking to get some stability or predictability, actually, around sort of like the classic feast or famine that I think all early stage creators or new businesses go through. And I was put in touch with you, and your course, but it's more than a course, really, in terms of trying to balance that out. So, like, I wonder, to you now, because obviously you've been doing it for a couple of years, like, do you still call it a course? Like, how do you look at what you've built in terms of I guess as a business, but also as like an offering?
I actually get pissed off when people call it a course.
I thought you
Because
might.
that's like is that why you've asked this question?
No, it's just, obviously it is so much more. But I think from my perspective, and I will let you talk in a minute, as you are the guest, is like I was sort of approaching it that there are course materials, and like there's no other way to really kind of get around that, because there is a structured learning syllabus in there. It is a course, like, but yeah, sorry, you carry on.
It's an online portal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is a course, and that's the backbone of it all. That's I describe it now on sales calls as that's the rigidity where everything else is fluid. Maybe a poor choice of words, I don't know, but that's like 1/5 of what you get. And could you take the course on its own and get results? Yeah, definitely. But you've got other people around you. You've also got the calls. You've also got the events. You've also got some extra on-demand recordings, which aren't necessarily that sexy in comparison to the other three things. But course, community, and calls, like that's the holy trinity for me. And they're all one and the same, because some people will come in and get the results just off watching one or two like lessons in like modules in the course, whereas other people need it from the community and who they meet. We had two people the other day bumped into each other in the same village coffee shop. Like it's crazy. So yeah,
Taking over.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like it's a recipe, isn't it? It's all a few different ingredients, one on its own. Might taste nice, if you just like eating salt.
Yeah.
Or drinking vinegar. I don't know, but
yeah, good analogy. So it's interesting that you chose the word recipe, because but and I dig into that a little bit. So did you start with all three? Because I know from your background you were kind of in sales, selling, working in agency, kind of like selling in agency services. So you kind of had that background behind you, and like what you actually do, probably should sort of clarify to anyone who doesn't know you, is you kind of help people build businesses. I think your headline at the moment is like the secrets of social selling. So that's kind of like where you're coming from, helping people build and scale a business with sort of sales rigor and stuff at the heart. So like when you started doing this, did you build the course and then launch? Like, what was the kind of process that you went through?
Oh, an awful one. I did build the course and then launch, and it just wasn't enough. And there was two reasons why it wasn't enough. One, I sold 2 copies of the course on its own, but also I don't think I believed in it. And I knew it was good. I think my content's really good. I think it can shift the way people think, and I think it's actionable. Again, maybe a little bit biased, but I'm very objective, or try to be when I'm looking at this stuff. But I think whether the course material on its own was good enough or not, personally, I don't think it was quite up to scratch. I don't believe a course on its own is enough to get anyone anywhere. Whoever it's from. Yeah, you can pick up a couple of bits, but most people want that experience. That's why I think like community is a horrendous buzzword, but it's also the best part about what we do and what people like us do. So obviously I launched a course, it flopped. I refunded one person, one other person agreed to join Content to Clients. And then we took it from there. So it wasn't fully built at all, because you've been in there, you've seen how much there is. There's loads. It's more like a library now than a course. There's a structured part to it, and then it's whatever you need to get, you can get. So no, it was very flawed. Still is, in my opinion. I'm working on the 4th C2C 4.0 now. So I'm working on the 4th version of it. Having only really just finished the 3rd. And yeah, I think nothing's ever finished when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? So I am stepping back and trying to make it more principle and fundamental focused rather than like hacks and tactics focused, which it will be. But yeah, it's a constant for anyone that's in my shoes now who comes in as a client. I always say you need to like sell the minimum viable as much as you can, and then build it while you've got people in there giving you real time live feedback.
That's such an interesting perspective, and it's something that I'm trying to take on board, like with some of the stuff that because it just feels it feels wrong, and it's sort of going against a lot of the sort of thing in your brain, and you always create excuses. That's one of the things that you talk about in the course. There's always an excuse that you can find if you want one. So it's like breaking free from that. Well, I'm going to get stuff out, learn from it, iterate, go again, keep stuff moving. Because I've landed two podcasts at the start of this year. This is like the second one, as well as my own, and like it was so daunting. There was so much, and like I did a couple of recordings and I wasn't happy, and I spent ages like trying to finesse the intros and all of that sort of side of it. Was actually it's kind of like get it out, get feedback, because you just learn so much more from other people experiencing it. And then it's the other side of that as well, is like if you're the one doing it all, you're the one that's sort of engulfed in it. It's so difficult to look at things objectively. So like you
don't get to determine the quality of your product.
The
consumers do, and it's the same with your content. What you think is like is shit is like one man's piss is another man's beverage is a rap lyric I really like. But it's true, right?
It is.
Like you could have put that was some of those podcasts out and they could have touched, even if it was a very small number, 1 or 2 people, or made them act in a different way, consciously or subconsciously. Whereas if you don't take the action of putting it out there and you try and finesse it and try and get it perfect, you stall it by 6 months and then you lose the opportunity to impact that person's life. Your audience determine what's quality, not you. I believe quantity is at the start. If you can do both, great. But if you're on this learning curve like all of us are, quantity, because then you will find out what your audience actually determine as quality.
It's interesting you say that as well. So I spoke to Tim Hansen for the first episode of this, and he
SEO guy.
Yeah, 530, and now AI SaaS business owner as well in terms of his pen friend business. But he talked about like the holy grail is obviously high quality content at scale, and he was kind of looking to just engage on LinkedIn and build an audience. And he knew what to do. Like he's a content strategist, so he's not a fool, but he was like, in actual fact, like what is going to resonate the most, and he's kind of adopted a learning mindset, turned up every day to post and learn from things, and like actually like really carved out really strong brand and following that way. When you sort of came to this, obviously you left I can't remember the name of the agency you were at, but you left the agency to go your own way. Like what were the steps that you took? Like had you been working on the course materials and what have you in the background, or was there another route that you thought you would go down first?
It wasn't really intentional. None of this was really intentional. So I built an audience on Instagram, again, putting out stuff that I wanted to put out, and it was a post a day, so it wasn't obsessed like massive loads of not much quantity going in. I thought it was quality. It was pretty good. And then a couple of people just came to me saying, can you help me with sales? Because I was doing very B2B faceless content as well, because I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to know who I was, for a number of reasons. One, because of the job, but two, because I didn't want to get judged by anyone, let alone people near me or in my friendship circle or whatever. And then after that, I landed a couple of one-to-one clients for very, very cheap. I based our agency's rate per hour on how much I should charge. But the thing is, they were selling blocks of hours and I was selling singular hours. And yeah, I'd land 1 or 2 hour-long clients, and then I'd have to convert every single week. I'd have to reconvert people. And it's like, this isn't quite right. And I spoke to someone, they were just like, just raise your prices, sell in bigger blocks. So I did.
Mm.
And I saw, like I said, 2.5 grand to this woman. She paid in full on the call. And I was like scrapping around for like, oh, she was international, like PayPal, Stripe. I didn't have a Stripe set up, nothing like that. And that's when I started to build out materials for her. And then I thought, how can I make this more scalable? Well, obviously, it's put it into a course and stop messing around with Notion. So that's when I went down the course only route that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought people need more than a course. Like, and I just worked with a guy called Dan Thomas on specifically on Instagram growth. And I joined one of his cohorts, which was 200 quid. And I remember questioning my life for about 3 days, not whether I could afford it, whether it was worth it to put this £220 or maybe even $220 into this guy's Insta growth course. And he's a great guy. Love Dan. And he knows how to make a product. And you had the Telegram group, you had a course, and I think you also got a couple of one-on-one calls with him. And that was a bit of inspiration for me to build my course. But then I realized, no, it's not enough. But yeah, much respect to Dan Thomas for helping me with the Instagram growth. Great guy. I feel like I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but
No,
that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So I think obviously the audience for this is like are creators in one way, shape, or form, or agencies who work with creators who are looking for ways to kind of help grow audiences, build brands, and monetize them. Like, and you said you sort of stumbled into sort of teaching people selling and doing this almost by accident. But how did you go about then once you sort of realized?
Sorry, that was quite like leaving the role.
Yeah, but once you discovered there was a bit of a opportunity there and an appetite for people to sort of take up this, well, let's say an available market who probably needed help doing this stuff. Like, how did you go about building that audience, finding clients? What was your kind of strategy in terms of taking it from, a few people on Instagram into what you have now, which is like 120 6-month long committed people, like in the sort of community today? I think looking at it now, 118.
Yeah, I know that's a surreal number, man. I did it on the quiet. A lot of my friends still don't know what I do. I bumped into one in the co-op on Saturday or Sunday, and he was like, "Aren't you some sort of social media influencer now?" I was like, "Yeah." I think I even prompted him on the word influencer. That was interesting. But I did it all. Obviously, I was very protective over the fact that I had like a job and I was in employment. I was also very protective over like my own rep around my friends, and like the fear of judgment thing was real. I really did not want to be judged by.
What? Just on that, why not? Is it just because no one else in your friendship group was doing this?
I mean, that's still a part of it. I'm still very conscious that because I'll openly talk about money with anyone in the creator world, and online, but not amongst my mates. Simply because, yeah, we come from Macclesfield. We've got that very much like working class mentality, which is great. I think you get by with that, but yeah, fear of judgment. I think I've spent a lot of my life seeking external validation, and weirdly enough, breaking through that fear of judgment has now allowed me to not give as much of a shit. But I'm more conscious about making people other people playing the comparison trap, or putting themselves in the comparison trap. Sorry, if I start saying something about a 5k, 10k a month, or something like that, so I just don't do it apart from in front of a couple of close friends. That's it. So that it was definitely what other people thought of me. Who does this guy think he is? And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, the next Stephen Bartlett, that's what they'll try and say. Who the fuck do you think you are, next Stephen Bartlett kind of thing. And that was real, like a real fear, man. And that stopped me from going out. Even when I was employed at the agency, I could have posted whatever I wanted, like just complete creative control. Whereas some companies won't let you have that. And I just didn't, because something held me back. So when I came onto LinkedIn, this was April 2022, they were all blocked. Every single person, all the clients colleagues, everyone was blocked. And that's when that was when C2C was 4 months old, because I launched it in January 2022. And then July the 1st is when I actually quit. That was my first, so nearly 2 years.
That's an interesting one. So like I had, when I first, so I got made redundant in December of that year, 22. That's when I sort of went out, was forced out on my own, and I went through a very icky phase of like every time I sort of logged onto LinkedIn and started writing stuff or whatever, I just used to get my mates messaging me all the time, just going like, what are you waffling on about on LinkedIn, mate? Like, what are you talking about? And like, it did almost stop me a number of times, but ultimately, like, I realized that I had to find revenue, like I had to find work. Otherwise, we were out on our ear with 2 small kids. So I guess I had other motivating factors which kind of pushed me through that barrier. But I think everybody has a bit of that ick, don't they? Do you think?
Well, there's definitely a front to everyone in some form. When if we're having a conversation, but if this was me doing a marketing video, I'd be like, 3 ways, and my voice would straight away go up, the hands would go out, and the energy would raise. So like, you could argue that's a front. I'd argue it's a magnifying glass, but it's it's one in the same in some regards. But yeah, the ick, I still get it sometimes. Like when I look at what I'm writing, I'm just like, you think you're some like modern day philosopher? Just shut the fuck up.
Well, at least it's not like totally vapid stuff. I don't want to get into bashing some of the tropes and things that are happening on LinkedIn at the moment, but it's weird how actually like some of the stuff that is sort of like faux philosophy or just like generic obvious stuff seems to perform so well. People seem to latch onto it for some
I
unknown
think
reason.
that always has been and always will be the case, because we're probably further along in our own business journey, self-development journey, philosophy journey, whatever it is, than a lot of the population. So it's more likely it's just a wider topic. We've probably heard it 10 times. For the first person that ever sees it, it's just like, my God, this is profound.
Yeah, game changer.
Yeah, literally life changer.
Yeah, I think I won't name any names, but someone posted how they'd put different content and have a different personality on Instagram than they did on LinkedIn. And I think it had like thousands of comments, and I just couldn't. Maybe it's just because marketing sort of 101 that you adapt to the channel or whatever. But yeah. So look, let's change tack slightly. So you are not long back from Las Vegas. So you went to Hormozi's event out there. What did you take away from that? Because I'd imagine that was probably pretty severe sheep dip into his sort of way of doing things.
Oh, I took a lot, man. Like, I don't really know where to start. The whole thing was based around selling your business. And I wasn't told that when I signed up and paid for it.
You mean taking it through to exit, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
selling it,
How
okay.
do you turn it into a sellable asset? So as soon as I walked in and they'd done the intros and stuff, we're going to talk about how you can sell your business. I was like, I don't want to sell my fucking business.
Yeah.
But they obviously had a point. And they said, whether you want to sell it or not, still making your business a sellable asset is favorable either way. So like, oh yeah, okay, makes sense, because it's a nice, like it's an asset either way. You know, you could sell it or you can keep it. It makes you money. So that was a bit of a reframe. The whole concept of it was tightening up every little screw along the pipeline, if you like, of the customer journey and the behind the scenes customer journey, and making it watertight, but also just exposing the many like leakage points that all small creators have. I was probably, in terms of making them the most money, certainly from the people I spoke to, one of the smallest in the room. A lot of ads focused people in there, which obviously we've only just started doing ads. Aside from that, like, it was based around the constraints, so bottlenecks or those leakage points that I mentioned, and it was really interesting. So we met the whole team on a one-to-one basis, but also roundtable and Q&As with them. And Alex and Layla did 2 monster presentations back to back on the first day. Second day, 2 monster Q&As. It was a bit of a shame because you couldn't take any like recording equipment, or you weren't even allowed your laptop. Now you're filling out. I've got it here actually, because I've just been working on, flash those numbers too heavily because that's a financial thing, but little workshop and a little worksheet, sorry, on all the different bits that you had to do. And the main takeaway for me was around data. Every single person that I spoke to, either one-on-one or in a very small group setting during the roundtables, referred to data in some form. And you know what Hormozi's like if you've ever watched any of his stuff. There's no emotion whatsoever.
No.
There's a bit of humor. It's all like, is it a fact, or is it an opinion, or is it a feeling? Because if it's an opinion or a feeling, it's irrelevant. And I kind of like that. Well, I don't kind of like that. I fucking love that. And yeah, it's just that data should be mandatory was one of the things that he said. The other thing that he said, which I've really taken home, and again, it's so fucking simple, but I don't think many people do it. He said, everyone's trying to scale. Everyone's trying to just grow. Everyone's trying to get bigger. And he said, rather than trying to get bigger, just try to get better. Because if you get better, you get bigger by default. And that's like what he's doing is the prime example of that. He's just slowly refining every single piece of content for every single channel just a little bit, then pumping the quantity through. And you know, he's massive. Just his year-on-year growth just from following alone, never mind revenue or, you know, monetary aspects. Insane.
Yeah, and I'm sure he hasn't, but it sort of almost feels like he's gone from nowhere to kind of everywhere, and everybody's talking about his books and his presentation and stuff from last year when he launched his book, and he kind of being heralded as like a masterclass in marketing and what have you. I don't know that I would call it that.
Not the book launch. No, I wouldn't either, personally.
But you know, he's obviously got his tried and true. So what was for you? What was like? I don't know how much you can give away. What was
anything, man?
Other than data, what were some of the other issues that people were kind of touting or talking about?
Well, the main thing, from like aside from, it was all tied to data, to be fair. That's not me trying to dodge a question. Like, I'll flick through some of this book just to refresh my memory. But aside from data, there was loads of stuff. You know, we talked about hiring and stuff like that. Layla's obviously the head of operations there, or I think she's CEO now. It was all about reducing your CAC, pardon my French, your cost to acquire a customer, but then increasing your LTV, which is your long-term value. So if you can drive down your cost to acquire a customer and get that as close to zero as you can, but drive the lifetime value up, say you sell a $1,000 a month retainer, if you can make that last for 12 months rather than 6 months, you've obviously done you've doubled your revenue there. So it was things like that fell into that, but then they came into the constraints angle. Like, okay, so what are the bottlenecks that stop you from lowering your like client acquisition cost, essentially? and that could be anywhere I'm reading here from the advertising. It could be the creative, the messaging, and it's all these little gaps that I mentioned before that you just if you can plug all of them, it's going to have a massive effect. And Hormozi says this a lot. I don't know if he said it on the day or not, but it's not one golden bullet. It's 100 silver BBs, or not one silver bullet. It's 100 golden BBs. And if you can fire them rather than just focusing on this one thing, that's going to be what makes the difference. Like plugging all the little gaps rather than just going, oh, just like throw a load of I don't know, filler over here or whatever it is.
Polyfiller.
Yeah.
So how did you? So that there's going to be a lot of people listening that they've probably got products to sell or courses that they offer or some kind of way to monetize themselves, their own brands. Like how, and you're obviously doing that same thing. How do you go around, or how do you sort of think of or track or sort of plot out that customer journey? Like, are you doing it fully digitally? Have you like drawn it out on a piece of paper? Like, what do you do in terms of that process? It sounds like that event's giving you some stuff to sort of think about and work on. So how do you identify the gaps? How do you draw it out? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, the customer journey for me is made up of like however many mini journeys, I reckon. So you think about the journey to someone not knowing who you are to actually discovering you, and they know you. You know, like trust. I'm sure a lot of people watching or listening will know that. But once they know you, how do you get them to like you? Well, there's a few journeys they could go on. So we can go really deep into each of those or not, and then it's like, okay, now I like this person. How do I actually trust them? Well, the like is probably reinforced with some emotional type content or something that pulls on the heartstrings, so you can identify with this person. There's an element of, I don't know, symmetry, is that the right word? Synergy, I don't know, I'm just saying words that rhyme for the sake of it. You know what I mean though. And then the trust side of things is probably a more logical, like, oh, this guy, this lady, they make sense, maybe I should work with them. Then it's like the conversion point, turn them into a client, and most people think the journey stops there. Actually, that's when the real journey starts. It's like, how do we give this person a quick time to value? They called it TTV. You have your first aha moment, you have your first monetary return or your first real return from what the product or the service offers, and then how do you like get this person to refer you on to other people and stay with you forever? So that would be like the ideal scenario where all those touch points are engineered and maximized with spending the least amount of like money and effort and energy and focus, I guess, after a while. So how do you engineer the perfect customer journey? Well, every one of those points could have, first and foremost, has to have an objective and a journey to get to the next one. So optimize, like, how do you take someone from not knowing who the fuck you are to clicking on your profile, if we're just talking LinkedIn, or clicking through on your ad, or in fact, hovering on your ad and actually spending more than 5 seconds with it. So each one, there are a million drop-off points, let's say, in this whole journey, and that's where the plugs come in. Like, how do you plug that? Well, you make it better somehow.
How do you go about finding out how to make it better? Is that just a test and learn situation?
I think you know the answer to that, because it's all testing, and it's all learning. And anyone that will come on any kind of podcast or even on any sort of microphone and claim to say that they've learned it all and they've done the testing, they'd be lying, because it's an ever-changing landscape, right? But yeah, like, some of it will be obvious to you. And I think you can do, before you roll anything out, you can do a pretty robust amount of testing between you and yourself, few different devices, email addresses, friends, family, whatever. It really depends on what you're optimizing for, I think, because you're either trying to get leads, you're either trying to acquire customers or clients, or you're either trying to get them to stay or spend more or longer. So there's you can look at it on a micro level as, oh, my Calendly form really pisses people off because I asked them this one question about what underwear they're wearing, or it's how do we get more people to the Calendly form and ultimately get them to convert on like a macro level?
Yeah, that's it's a lot of the work that I do with clients, like outside of like this side of thing, actually, like supporting people with their strategy and like looking at, it's exactly that. It's like having that next step. What is the purpose of like what you're doing? What's the best trigger or the best action that we can do, or to bring people closer to us, whether it's an additional download from something, or a free giveaway, or free time, and anything that's sort of along those lines. And then just optimizing the actual individual bits of content, copy, video, like whatever you're using as part of that sort of deployment. So what has been for you like the biggest challenge to getting to where you are now? Because I know that you're sort of sitting there with, a very successful business. You've launched a mastermind side of it as well, so like a more in-depth sort of mastermind course, which became just too early for me this year. But like, what's been the sort of biggest challenge to get to where you are now, do you think? And like, if you had to start again, what wouldn't you do?
Oof, two massive questions. Every day's a challenge in some respect. I love it. I think when you become a business owner, you are a problem solver. So your problems just transfer, they never evaporate. Like a rich person versus a poor person in terms of where they live. You might have a bigger house, but ultimately you've still got to pay more for the gardener and the pool guy and whatever. Whereas the poorer person's just trying to get the money for some new curtains or something, and both are fine, but both come with their own problems. So I think the biggest challenge, it's a really tough question. I'll always say that the biggest challenge is whatever I'm facing right now, because everything I've faced already, I've already conquered. Everything that's yet to come doesn't exist yet. So I think more money, more problems, more clients, more problems, more team members, more problems. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by an amazing team, but I think I boil it down to when I started out and I was working one-to-one with people. That was it, just me and them. I had one person with one set of problems. So I had one client, then wife and kids. So let's call that, and myself. So let's say there's 3 clients. All of a sudden, I've got a mastermind full of clients. I've got a group of 120 people full of clients. I've still got the family, thank God. Still got myself, thank God. But I've also got team as well now, and they're my clients in a way. I'm theirs, but they're mine as well. So the biggest problem I'm facing right now is right now, and just navigating through all those things. But I've like always thought of scale is just like, is there a crack in something? Well, if you shine a microphone, a magnifying glass on that crack, it's going to get bigger. Whereas if there isn't a crack at all, you shine a magnifying glass on it, it's fine. So it's like the biggest problems actually stem from the smallest problems in a way. When you start to get bigger, like if our course was shite and we just shoved 1,000 more people into it, it's just going to cause a lot more problems, but at scale.
Yeah.
The same with a crap ad. You can feed as much, or a crap landing page is a better example. Feed as much traffic to it through the ads if you want, but if it just doesn't convert, it's just more traffic not converting. So I'm still adjusting to the scale on multiple levels. And you know what? We've done all this organically so far, so there is no scale yet. It's not scaled through people, not through money or machines, which is the next way to do it, next option for us. I don't want to bring on any more teams. So I got off on a tangent as well, again, a bit, but
that's all right. It's all good. It's all good stuff. Like I
don't know. It's a very hard question. I could probably talk about things that I've not. Well, I will do, but in a sec, what not to do. But yeah.
Yeah, you talked about, just to pick up on that, like, we'll dive back into like what you wouldn't do in a second. Like you mentioned, not machines there. Have you got eyes on, or are you considering where you might augment what you do with AI, or are you exploring ways to sort of amplify what you're doing, or are you sort of not as staunchly against it, but just not ready to explore that yet?
AI. I mean, I run the odd YouTube script through like Chat GPT and stuff, and we'll get it
Mm,
to add things in and ask me more questions about it. And sometimes it's really. There was one video where I pretty much used the whole frame of Chat GPT to deliver, well, to write. Um, I don't want that to come out as Chat GPT wrote the script because it fucking didn't. But it gave me some very, very clear. I've fed it loads of info. I spent ages, and ultimately, I probably could have whipped one up in a similar amount of time myself.
yeah.
Um, I'm I see the damage that AI does, as well as the like the it's a gift and a curse, isn't it? For
Hmm.
sure. I see the massive benefits that it has. I'm very much like, we could add a Chat GPT module into our program, but ultimately, unless it was so in depth, the amount of information I believe you have to feed these robots right now. And when I say robots, I don't, before, or machines, I don't necessarily just mean AI. I mean things like ads and
Yeah.
whatever. But I'm still dubious about it because I really do like. I'm a salesperson, but I'm actually more of a creator of, like, that's what I
Hmm.
really enjoy. I can fanny around with YouTube thumbnails and carousels for fucking hours. Like, I
Yeah.
love, and video editing, even though I'm shit at that, but I can mess around with it for hours because that's what I enjoy, building shit and
Hmm.
making little diagrams and stuff. Ultimately, that doesn't pay the bills because you can get someone else to do it who's probably better than you, and no, it's a lot less in spend ultimately. So
Yeah.
yeah, AI yeah, it's whatever. I'll tap into it a little bit. I've made some cool images and stuff,
Mm.
but there's too much of it going on for me to like fully like take my hat off or even nod my hat to it at this point. Like,
It's interesting. Like the last person I spoke to, Tom Popomaronis, he has built. So he's got like an army of 10 to 15 custom GPTs that he's built, that he, much the same as you said, like you run transcripts through, or you can run scripts through. And he's, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time he's invested in building each of these, but I imagine it's, like you said, a lot of time and effort. But now he was saying that he can take transcripts, run them through these custom GPTs, and like produce reams of like really high quality output based off of the stuff, that the conversations that he's having with people, which I think is a really like amazing application of it. But yeah, I just wondered whether that was going to be something that you were exploring, and I don't know
yeah, I am.
necessarily.
I am in the background. Like, if we want to go a little bit deeper, I do have like a 45-page document that I've got uploaded to a custom GPT that
Yeah,
I use for myself just to conjure stuff up.
yeah.
It's not good enough. I've
Mm,
given it 45 pages of who I am, who I want to be, examples of my content,
mm,
categorize that. I even like fed Chat GPT my content to then tell me what my content was, or that its opinion of my content, to then put it back into this document
yeah.
alongside like loads of stuff. And the output is still nowhere near good enough for me to publish. And that's probably on me in terms of a programming approach. Maybe I
But
don't know exactly what to
maybe though,
say.
right? It's not like you're a slouch on this stuff, and the fact that you've spent that much time, that much energy and effort putting stuff in, and it's still not
Well,
churning out what you want.
Katie wrote most of it, but yeah.
Okay, it's Katie's fault then.
Yeah, perfect frame. No, she did like the before, during, and after sort of feelings, thoughts, beliefs, blockers, mindset shifts of all our clients. So it can churn out stuff like that pretty well. But I've gone to town making a personal brand document for myself. And I've got a custom GPT for 80-year-old me, like with all my values, and sometimes I'll occasionally just stick in like, oh, what should I do with this problem? But for me, it's absolute generic bullshit unless you've got the same amount of time to produce the content that you're going to feed into it prompt wise. That's just Chat GPT though.
Yeah. It probably won't be that way for long. That's the
it won't.
speed.
And that's why you need to stay up on it. I mean, I've been using AI for years, and we probably all have when you think about it. Like I used to turn up to agency meetings 5 years ago and have Otter note taker or whatever, and I wouldn't tell anyone. I'd put it in there on the middle of the desk on my phone, and it'd record, and I'd have a transcript. Never fucking used it, but you know, it was
good to have.
Good. Yeah, it's good to look back on with the grandkids. You know.
Yeah, I've just cancelled my Otter subscription because I realised I was paying for it, and I don't think I've ever interrogated a transcript, which because I always take notes at the same time, which is sort of defeats the object. But there we go. So let's go back to that last sort of last question. Like, if you had to start again, I guess it's sort of wrapped up with advice you would give to your younger self, or like someone who's sort of embarking on this journey. Like, what would you not do, and like kind of where would you actually like really focus your time? Like, if you were back to say January 22, was it?
Yeah. Oh God. Like I could go back to. I've got a nephew who, you know, he's much cleverer than I am. He's got a similar work ethic to me, I believe. He likes to drink less than I do, which is also good. And I often think, like, what would I tell him about certain things? But he's a little bit earlier on. He's, I don't know how old he is, 21, something like that. I often think, like, looking back at him, what advice would I give him? Because it's harder to think of my younger self than it is someone who's happening now, kind of thing. But like, I can tell he's, and I know I was by far, he's much more forward than I ever was. Like, stop caring what fucking people think, for the love of fucking God. That's the biggest thing ever. Like, who the hell do you think you are to think that they actually care about you that much anyway? Like, they'll just say some fucking snide shit, and you'll be one of 10 snide comments they've made that afternoon. So crack on and be you, because before you know it, you'll be fucking 45 and you'll be absolutely gutted, and you'll have tits as a male. Like, just don't worry about all these insignificant people. I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just insignificant to you. You need to do what you want to do, and you need to do it as fast as you can, even if you're shit at it right now. That's one piece of advice. In terms of the actual journey itself, going back to 2022, I wouldn't try and be on every platform. That's a big thing. Like, just focus on one, probably two, in all honesty, but max out one. Say no. I feel like a bit Chat GPT-ish, like just churning out generic advice here. Like, don't work with shit clients. I think you've got to work with shit clients to appreciate good ones, and also appreciate shit ones even more, and spot them when, like, earlier on. But that, like, there's been it weighs on me when I have a bad client, because I take it personally and think I've messed up, when that's just not true, because I give quite a lot.
Yeah, you do.
So, but like, as soon as you identify a couple of patterns in bad clients, trust your gut. That's a big piece of advice. And just stay with the same thing. Like, if you don't quit, you can't lose. Even if you're like mediocre for 10 years, it's probably better than just being amazing for 10 days.
At the end, when you finally figure it, when you finally find something.
Yeah, exactly. Or right at the start, get loads of attention and then just dip. But But I think the power of one. As there's a great book. What's it called? It's something. It might even be called The Power of One.
I'll try and remember and add it to the show notes.
Yeah, it's something called One.
We'll narrow it down in the chat afterwards, like between Chris and I. We'll make sure that it's in the show notes.
It's nothing to do with 2, 3, 4, 5. It's definitely one.
Definitely one.
But yeah, no, like the focus on the one thing is absolutely crucial. So I remember being told this, like, one offer for one audience who have one problem at one price point, and you market it on one platform. And that's really a really hard rule to abide by. Really hard, because the temptation to just go on Instagram or to just post a YouTube video about it because you've made a video for LinkedIn is hard to stay away from.
I also think, particularly for something like content strategy and social selling and what have you, like, so it's so interwoven to so many things, like, that it's hard to just be that laser focused. But obviously it makes so much sense as well, because like you talk about in marketing circles, like in terms of, in the world that I operate in, mostly like B2B, there's 3% ish of your target market that might be in market at any one time. So the message that you're sending out, if you keep changing, like that 3%, you might constantly miss it. And like people who, I think it's something like 10% of your audience may see a post that you make on any one day. So like even one singular post has got easily 10 to 12 to 15 times the length that you think it has in terms of actually saturating the market and getting your point across. So if you're forever shifting what that point is, or communicating something slightly different, and people just keep dropping in and finding different messages at different points, like, it's confusing. People don't know what you're an expert in.
Neither do you if you keep changing it.
Yeah,
that's massive. Yeah, and like I was just about to reference, like, why do songs blow up? It's not because of the ever-changing lyrics in the verses. It's because of the choruses. It's because of the repetition. That's the bit that stays on your mind. So you need to become known for that. Like, I think it's called The One Thing. There we go. We got there. The One Thing by Gary Keller. Fucking get in. You need to become known. I might have even nicked this point from that book. Even funnier. But you need to become known for that one thing. And, you know, it's the Bruce Lee quote, isn't it? Like, don't fear the man that's practiced 1,000 techniques one time each. You need to fear the man that's practiced one technique 1,000 times, because he'll be that good at executing it. And yeah, just sticking with it, because again, I think this is a Hormozi quote. The longer you can play the game without seeing or expecting a reward, basically, the longer you can delay your gratification, when it drops, it's like a fruit machine. It'll drop big. But if you just keep cashing out your £1.20 every 3 minutes or whatever, you're never going to get there in terms of the big payoff.
That's true. Chris, thank you for your time, mate. I really appreciate it. What, are you going to say something else?
So I was just going to say I need to go to the toilet quite soon.
so
is that perfect timing?
Yeah, I will cut that bit out.
Don't cut that. That's funny.
Right, Chris, thank you. I will let you escape to the toilet. I'll make sure I'll add all the stuff that you've been referencing in the show notes, or as much of it as we can remember and go through. But it's amazing to talk to you. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.